Hello everybody, this is TalkToMe. This is my first attempt at doing a screen cover video. I hope that it turns out alright. I'm still struggling to repair 3 of the videos I wanted to post previously. It's about 2:30 in the morning, and I want to clarify some things that I said in a previous video. I'm not certain whether it's one I've posted or whether it's one that I'm still trying to fix. But I said that it can be harder for someone who is depressed and suffering loss and so forth when it doesn't have a physical, take on a physical form. For example, if somebody loses a leg, the focus becomes the lost leg. They have a point of reference to start from, to build from, to work from. In my case, and in the case of many people, there doesn't seem to be a point of reference, a point to build from. There just seems to be lots of pain. I have the same problems today, pretty much, inevitably, as I did last year. They may be more prominent, but they're pretty much the same. And technically, I suppose I could say they're the same last year and this year as they've been every year. I could easily dismiss all of my problems. I could easily say, that's not good enough for me to be depressed over. That's not good enough for me to be feeling this way. There's no reason for me to be suicidal. It just doesn't seem so severe. I haven't been off to war. I haven't lost limbs. I haven't been mauled by an animal or raped or horrifically abused in terrible, awful ways. But inevitably, pretty much everyone tends to tell themselves that. They say, I've been through it, it's over, why can't I just get past it? Why can't I just get past it? And it's not like that. You have to work through it, whether you're an amputee or military personnel, or you've lost loved ones, or you were raped, or you're abused, or you're neglected, or your life is just so mediocre, so disconnected, so isolated from everyone else that it constantly hurts. No matter what the problem is that is causing you to feel depressed, suicidal, miserable, anxious, nervous, irritated, constantly angry, whatever it is, you have to work through it. And I'm not saying that folks who go out to war suffer less than those who stay home and do nothing. I'm saying that it is harder to work through in many ways, to begin working through the issues that one suffers at home in simple circumstances, because there's no seeming point to begin with. There's no focal point as to where you start, what the problem actually is, why the problem actually is. And it can take years just to discover where to start. It can take a long time to figure out that this is the issue. Here's a problem. Here's the fundamentals as to why this has all started, and everything else spans out from there. My brother, for example, he's got a lot of problems, and I always thought it was this or that or that, and he always thought it was this or that or that. People would tell him, you're an angry person, but he's not. People would tell him, you have this problem or you have that problem, but that's not true. His problems tend to stem from a singular problem, which stems from a singular issue. I'm not saying he doesn't have multiple problems. I'm saying that he's been through a lot, and as such, he feels that he needs to complete himself through processes and contemplations and so forth. He values others' opinions even when he probably shouldn't, or he values them too highly. He measures his self-worth in ways that can be destructive at times, harmful to him and to others. And so he builds on that, and it causes other problems. It causes him to get frustrated. It causes him to get angry. It causes him to become hurt, even when it would seem as if it's something that he could just brush off. It's not something that he can brush off. He's still suffering and still enduring it, and the reason because of that is because he was not, because of the things that he'd been through in his childhood. It built from there. And it took years to figure this out. It took revelations to figure this out. It took great understanding and discussion and debate to find that the problem was not what it was seemed to be most obviously, but something more covert, something that was more subtle and passive, and yet it actively affected everything in his life. It had changed him and the way that he saw things and the way that he felt, and it caused him much pain and suffering. So now he has a better grasp of what went wrong, and it's causing him to view his life situations, all of them, very differently. He's thinking back on the things that he's done and said and lived, and he's viewing it differently through the concept that he now understands. It's about finding a concept. It's about finding, I mean, maybe not in all cases. Sometimes it really is something more physically tangible, and you don't realize exactly what that is. Maybe it's a chemical imbalance. Maybe it's a deficiency. Maybe it's some kind of brain damage or harm that you received and you didn't even know about it. You don't have to go to war to get these kinds of things. They can happen in your life and you don't even know. You don't even realize it. And sometimes it's a thing. It's about how you grew up. It's about the environment, and it shapes you. You build up coping mechanisms, and those coping mechanisms can become harmful because you don't know how to escape those coping mechanisms. You don't know how to utilize them properly. But your mind and body builds these mechanisms. It forces you to live and do things a certain way to overcome your problems, to overcome what it cannot deal with at that time. So even when you're older and you come to the point where you can deal with those things, you still have those mechanisms keeping you from working through the problem. And sometimes, typically actually, you have to find what those problems are and work them out. You have to find out what your coping mechanisms are and understand why you respond the way you do. Some people yell, some people run off, some people get sad and cry. Each of us responds completely differently, and there are reasons for why we respond that way. We need to understand ourselves. There's a lot of deeper, longer self-actualization and self-understanding involved in overcoming day-to-day problems. And so the beginning points can be hard to find. You look at what's going on and you think, well, why can't I just ignore it? Why can't I just do better? Why can't I just be better? And you constantly tell yourself these things as if you're not justified in feeling what you're feeling. It's not about being justified. You're feeling that way. If you're feeling that way, there's a reason for it, whether or not you think that reason is good enough. And you need to work through that, whether or not you think you can. And you need to learn. You need to understand yourself better to be able to help others to understand you and to be able to work forward with the actual immediate problems. It might not be that just because you're depressed that you treat the depression directly. That's what a lot of professionals tend to do. They see you're depressed and they give you a drug to overcome the depression. Well, why are you depressed? you need to understand how you got up to that point, why it is, and you need to find the fundamentals. It can take a lot of backtracking, a lot of self-reflection, a lot of time, a lot of communication with other individuals. My brother never saw that he had these problems, and I didn't either. And then suddenly it just clicked one day. He said something that made it all piece together. And it connected all the different issues that he had. Not all of them, not absolutely all of them. We still have financial issues, of course. We still have to deal with the schooling. We still have many other problems. We still have our mother to take care of. We still have things that we have to work with and work through. But he has now a better understanding of why he works the way that he does, why he compartmentalizes his emotions, why he looks at the world a certain way and thinks and processes things in a certain way. And that gives him a point to work with, that gives him a new perspective on his life and the things that he does and the things that he doesn't do and why. And it can take a long time to find these things out. But once you do, you start mending much more quickly. It's still daunting. It can still take years. Life takes a lot of time. It takes so much time. It takes every moment you have from the day that you're born to the day that you die, no matter how long you live. Life takes time. You have your whole life to work out living. Take that time. Begin. Getting started is probably the hardest part. But once you get started, you keep going, you keep working, you keep trying. You just have to choose what is worth getting started in, what is worth your beginnings, what is your point, your goal for which you're willing to strive, and then work for it. It may not be exactly what you think it should have been. You may think, well, I need to overcome my anger and my anxiety or my this or that issue. And then every way you find out the reason you even have those issues is because you have responses that are built up from issues you had when you were young or other things. And you need to understand that. And you might get down to the root of the problem and find out it's not what you pursued initially, and that's okay, because you're still bettering yourself, you're still learning, and you're still improving. And it can be necessary to talk to someone to reach that point. A psychiatrist, a counselor, but not always a professional. It could be family, it could be God, it could be just lying on your bed and thinking about your life and really looking at it more deeply than just, this happened. Somebody humiliated me. But why did I find that thing humiliating when everybody else found it funny? Why is it I was offended when others who had the same thing done to them wouldn't be? Maybe it relates to something else. Some people don't like being called by certain names, certain endearments. There are classical endearments that people tend to use, and some people don't like having those endearments used toward them. They think it's humiliating and degrading. Why? They should understand why. Maybe it's because of something they endured or because of something that happened to their parents. There are names I don't like being called that otherwise some people would take as a compliment because I heard them a lot from my sire. And they were endearing when he said it. And these terms or gestures and so forth, they disgust me and they offend me. But I recognize that. So even though I can't prevent others from using them toward me, I can understand why I feel that way. And when it happens, I can expect it. and I can work through it, and I can calmly let them know why I do not like those terms or gestures that would otherwise potentially be complimentary, and it helps. So my point is, do people who have physical afflictions suffer less? Sometimes yes, sometimes no, because it's not always just the physical afflictions. They tend to come with mental and emotional and spiritual issues. There's the heart, the mind, the body, the soul. And pretty much everything else stems out from these. As to you being an individual, and you need to understand these things, whether or not you believe you even have a soul. They've proven scientifically the soul exists. They even know how much it weighs. It has a consistent weight to it, a measurement that when somebody dies, they can actually tell that the person's died and that their soul has left by how much weight was lost from their body. And it's consistent. So whether or not you believe in certain things, they are real. And that's something that many individuals have to deal with. And that's also with problems. You'll have things you don't believe that it's this or that. You don't want to believe that it's this or that. People often avoid going to psychiatrists or getting help and so forth because they don't want to be found as crazy. Well, it's not about being crazy. It's about overcoming your issues and problems. If anything, it's worse and crazier if you don't. If you just ignore what is legitimately wrong with you. People tend to think that mental issues are not as justified as physical ones. And yet they're still there. They are still so tangible. They are crippling. So you have to learn to work through these things just as you work through physical problems. Your mind, your emotions, your spirituality, these things are just as significant and many times more so than your physical condition and issues. People say, oh, well, I'm fat, I'm socially unacceptable, so they try to change their body, when in truth they need to change their perspective, they need to change the way they respond and feel about it, they need to come to understand themselves in a greater light, and why the individuals teasing them are doing so. Is it because they are so socially traumatized and stunted that they have to pick on others because they don't feel they can accept themselves, because they are so self-loathing that they humiliate other people? How odd. The video just randomly came on. That is so weird. I'm trying to do this video with an image over it, and it just randomly fails. Wow. I was trying to get closer to the speaker so I could be heard better in this video, and the image just randomly turned off. I don't even know it's being recorded right now, if I'm visible or what, but you have to work through things. You have to come to a realization, and it's not about whether your problems are as severe as somebody else's problems. You have your problems, they have their problems, and each of you has to learn to work with them. You may not feel that they're as severe, but it's not about measuring yourself to others. It's about measuring yourself as you. There are things that you can cope with, and there are things that you can't. You need to understand your limits, your abilities, what makes you different, and what makes you similar. You need to understand you. And it's not about figuring out other people. But although it can help, figuring out you can help you to figure out others. I've learned a lot about other people by learning about me. I realized that there's always somebody else out there who has been through what you're going through. You're never alone. Never. There's always somebody who has gone through it. People tend to think that they're the only ones. They tend to wonder and believe that they are the only individuals who have gone through this, and what is so wrong with them that they are suffering this, that they are feeling this way. And that's not true. Everybody, there's always somebody out there who has been through it, and it's typically quite a lot of people. If you're depressed, there are countless individuals who've been depressed. If you're suicidal, there are countless individuals throughout all of history who've been suicidal. You can connect not only to others now, but to others in the great distant past. You're never alone. You're never completely isolated, no matter what your problem is, no matter how unique or singular it seems to be. You're never alone. And you just have to start. You just have to start and work forward. And that's probably the hardest part, getting to a beginning point when you don't even know where you are right now. You need to be willing to take the time and to put forth the effort to get better, to help others, to make a difference in your life. You just need to start. And it'll inevitably work out. Even if it's not the way that you intended, it'll work out. So don't give up just because you're suffering. Don't just give up because things aren't so clear, the way doesn't seem so obvious, just because you don't know where to begin and you don't have the resources. Yeah, it's different. Some of us will have far more resources, far more potential, far more beginning points, things to start with, folks to reach out to than others. I'm isolated in a singular apartment. I'm poor. I'm so poor we might not have enough money to make it through the summer. But I believe it'll turn out all right. That somehow this will all work out. And I'm trying. I'm trying to do the best that I can do to better myself, to do the work I have to bring in the money that I can from student financial aid, student loans. I'm trying. And today I intend to go to the clinic nearby. They weren't open yesterday because it was President's Day. And honestly, I have a hard time keeping track of the various holidays, except for the most obvious ones such as Christmas, Halloween. Yeah, that's kind of it. Oh, and the 4th of July. Everybody knows when that is. Mostly. Maybe there are people who don't. But don't give up. Don't think you're the only one. And those who do have physical afflictions, yeah, they can suffer as much as those who have mental ones. They can suffer even more because they typically have mental ones with the physical ones. But it's not that you lost a leg. Because I know of a story of a guy, he was out hiking around, and he got his arm pinned between a boulder and a wall. And he was there for about 3 days, and he couldn't get his arm out. And then he said, God gave me a vision of me with my wife, with a beautiful woman, and with a little child, but only one arm. And this guy, seeing this vision, took hope from it, and he cut off his own arm, and he wrapped it up and made his way out of a canyon to civilization. And he, the same time next year, had a son, just like he had in the vision. And he had a wife, and everything that he saw had come true. He had survived. He had made it through without the arm. But he had to prepare himself mentally. He was there for 3 days. He could have cut his arm off the first day, and he wouldn't have been so dehydrated and tired as the wear and tear of 3 days pinned to a boulder. But he needed that time to prepare himself inside to be able to progress forward. And he made it through. And now he has a physical affliction. He's missing an arm, but from the elbow down. But he survived, and he's doing better today, and he's grateful. And he wouldn't trade it for the world. So it's not the affliction itself. It's how you deal with it. There are people who come out of abusive families, who grew up with alcoholic parents or neglectful parents or abusive parents in some other form. There are people who have been raped, and some come out of it, and they come out of it well. And it's not because somehow they're better. It's not because they somehow didn't suffer as much. It's not because you're not good enough. It's because you're different, and you need to work through it, and they needed to work through it, and they did. And just because you think you can't go on, it doesn't mean that's true. Just because you think you can't overcome, it doesn't mean that is true. It means you're thinking that way. And you need to change your thinking. You need to say, yes, you can. You can overcome. You can improve. You can work through even the most hellacious of issues. You will not be defeated by the rape, by the abuse, by the neglect, by the drunkenness, by whatever it is. You will not succumb to the drugs that you've been taking. Yeah, you made wrong choices. I can tell you another story about a guy who he was a rock star. He was a professional rock star, and he did drugs, and he had lots of sex and all kinds of things, and it ruined him. And he ended up poor. He ended up a hobo on the streets, and a friend found him. At first, another hobo, another poor person who was on the streets, came up to him and said, "Yeah, you got it real bad. Let's pray." And they prayed together. And he asked that if the Lord would help him, would just give him a sign that God is real, he would do his best to overcome the drugs and to cease doing things that he did that were wrong. And a friend that he couldn't have expected came by, gave him a home, it wasn't an apartment, it was something else. Gave him an actual home and said to him, if you take care of this place, then you can stay here as long as you want, and I'll help you to get the medications you need to get off the it was something more severe than cocaine, way more severe actually, and he needed a certain medicine to be able to overcome that, and it's an expensive medicine. and he didn't have a job. And his friend was struggling and couldn't get it, and this guy prayed a second time. And it was the second time in his entire life he had ever prayed. And he asked God, if thou would help me to get the medicine that I need to overcome this drug addiction, if you would help me to make it through, if you would provide for me, I will serve you all the days of my life. And immediately the next day, not only did he get the medicine, he also got into a program that would help him. He got a number of other things, and even, I think, a job. And this is a real person, and this really happened. And he thanked God, and he devoted his life to the Lord. And now he's a pastor that teaches Christianity. And he's no longer a rock star or a drug addict. He has a home. I think he's even got a wife and kids now. But he teaches the word of the Lord. And the point was starting. He never thought he would get off the streets, or that he would give up drugs, or that he would overcome the lifestyle that he chose. He made mistakes, and he had hit the bottom of the barrel. He had been knocked to the lowest point because of the choices he made. And he acknowledged, yes, he was wrong. He had done wrong, but he could do better. He just had to be willing to try. And he tried. And others helped him through it, and God helped him through it. Yah helped him through it. And yes, our God, our Christian God, has a name. And he's better for it. So don't give up. Don't think that you're alone, and talk to me. Because as many problems as I'm struggling with, everyone in the world is struggling with problems. That doesn't mean yours are insignificant. It means that everybody else has problems as well that are also significant. It means the opposite. It means that they have value, they have meaning and reasoning, and they need to be worked through just as much as your problems. So I'm trying to help. Talk to me. If you don't believe that I care, prove me wrong. I'm going to try. Can I do it all for you? No. Can I somehow make you better magically? No. But I can pray for you, and I can communicate with you, and we can build from there. And if any of you have videos or advice, images, sites, literature, poems, anything, any kind of material that you can reference that will help others, post it on my site, give me a message, leave a comment, refer a URL, give a URL, something, anything. Because not only am I helping others, you can help others through me, through this channel. And we can make the difference that people need. So I hope your day goes well. I hope that this video helped you in some way or inspired you. That seeing me going through hard times may help you to find the courage and strength to go through your own hard times. I want the best for every one of you, even if I don't know you. I want the best. And that is love, and that is my God. Because it's about living love, and whether or not you believe that. I'm not going to rub it in your face and say, you have to convert. Whether or not that's true, you have to make a decision to better your own life and overcome the issues that you have. And work with others. You have to be willing to open up. You have to be willing to communicate. Others can't help you if you don't let them. So you have to be willing to try and to let others try. You have to be willing to make the first step. You have to be willing to begin. So contact me, reach out, look things up, and don't feel discouraged just because the first thing doesn't work out, or the second thing, or the 100th thing. I could have given up a few days ago, a couple days ago, but I'm still here, and I'm still trying. And I love you. I love every one of you, and I mean that. And I want the best for every one of you. So talk to me. Maybe I can help. Bye.